Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is Bhavini Patel, who is challenging Congresswoman Summer Lee in the Democratic primary. Bhavini, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course, absolutely. I'm very excited to be with you today.
I do want to start off by listing some things on your resume. You have a business background. You were co-founder and CEO of Beam Data. Currently, you're on the Edgewood Borough Council. So let's start at the beginning. What propelled you to leap into politics?
Yeah, so Western Pennsylvania is home, right? I grew up in Monroeville. I went to Gateway K through 12. My family is originally from India. So my mom raised my brother and I as a single parent. And before landing in Monroeville, we moved around quite a bit. And it wasn't easy, right? She worked a lot of different odd jobs, working in the restaurant industry as a dishwasher, working in the motel industry, cleaning motel rooms. And then she eventually found Monroeville and started a small catering business, supplying samosas and rotis to the local convenience store here. And that eventually transitioned into a small business. So she opened up a food truck on Pitt's campus. And I grew up working in that food truck, everything from running the serving window to helping out on the weekends with caterings and things like that. And, one thing led to another. And being on that campus, I eventually figured maybe I can be a student at Pitt. And so I attended the University of Pittsburgh, got my undergraduate there, and became the first in my family to graduate from college, and then went on to get my master's at Oxford in international relations. And so after 2 years abroad, came straight back home and sort of delved deeply into public service. And that's where I started my company, which is focused on civic engagement, ran and won my election to Edgewood Borough Council, and since then have been involved heavily on various different local boards, including the Master of Quantitative Economics Board at the University of Pittsburgh, serving on the Pennsylvania Medical Marijuana Advisory Board. And so for me, it's always been a theme about just being present in the community, being in touch with the concerns of my neighbors and finding a way to problem solve. And so I come up in my public service career through local government. And so, having this sort of granular approach to the day-to-day challenges of individualism, that's really important to me.
So let's fast forward then to 2022. You briefly ran for Congress. What did you learn from that experience?
So that was a remarkable experience. One thing that became very clear to me is that people are excited about young, dynamic leadership. They want somebody who is present in the community, somebody who's willing to show up, somebody who's committed to actually delivering on key concerns that we have in this region, including bringing home federal dollars, federal investments. And ultimately, my story really is truly emblematic of the American dream. I don't think that there's any other part of this in this country where my story would be possible, my family's story being possible. And so to me, that's something that's very special. It's something that I've continued to exemplify throughout the work that I've done in this region. And so here we are today, sort of spreading that same message and meeting with neighbors and having those conversations.
I want to talk more about that American dream, your business background in a little bit, but now you're running in 2024, or for 2024 rather. Did you change strategies at all this time around?
No, it's just been the same thing, right? Talking about key issues and concerns that we have in this region, which means, again, showing up. I think people are looking for a type of leadership that's rooted in the core values of being a Democrat, right? Focusing on gun violence prevention, focusing on advocating for reproductive justice, supporting our LGBTQ communities, amplifying and sort of providing support structures for the backbone of our economy, which is small businesses, bringing home federal dollars so that we can invest them into our research universities here to drive conversations around climate change and renewable energy.
I do want to talk about the economy. A recent Reuters Ipsos poll found the economy, crime, and immigration are top issues facing Americans. So how specifically would you be handling these issues?
So for me, I think we've had a lot of conversations throughout this entire district, right? We've been meeting with small business owners. We've been having conversations around public safety. And I think it's the key themes that it's coming up in the community is housing access, right? So how can we be creative around addressing housing and homelessness and all the socioeconomic factors that are surrounding that issue? And for me, it's about being innovative, right? So if elected to serve in Congress, as someone who comes up in local government, what can I do to provide local governments with the support structures that they need to address blight in our communities, to put back homes on the market so that we're addressing homelessness, crime, but also providing support structures and investments into our local communities to support the school system. And so all of these things, I think, are nuanced issues that require somebody who wants to actually deliver, as opposed to just speaking about issues.
And to the economy specifically, I mean, you really have a beautiful story that is really, as you said, emblematic of the American dream. And what do you think is needed to spur entrepreneurship today? Because the economy is that top issues for voters, both Democrats and Republicans. So how do we spur entrepreneurship in this country?
Yeah, so I think Western Pennsylvania is a very special place, right? We have a lot of hardworking people. We have a robust history as it relates to labor. A strong history as it relates to unions, small business owners who are willing to take on the risks. And so most recently, we were vying for the federal hydrogen hub designation. Unfortunately, we did not get that designation. But to me, it's that transformative type of funding that the Biden administration is making available that I want to be able to say that we're competing strongly and that we're bringing home those dollars and driving conversations not only nationally but globally on renewables and manufacturing and creating thousands and thousands of jobs with those federal investments. Arguably, we also were in the running for the Tech Hub designation. Unfortunately, we did not get that as well, right? Western Pennsylvania, we have Robotics Row. We have lots of innovators. We have people who are taking on risks and starting these businesses, focusing on AI and how to approach healthcare in unique ways. There's no reason why we shouldn't have gotten that Tech Hub designation. I think arguably it's about leadership. I mean, we need to make sure that we are positioning ourselves with the Biden administration to say that we are ready for these kinds of federal investments that can transform entire economies. And so, if elected, that's something that I would want to champion and be a strong partner to the Biden administration so that we can deliver on those results.
Let's talk about the Biden administration a little bit more. I'm actually from Pennsylvania myself, born, raised, went to college at Temple. I'm from southeastern Pennsylvania, so totally across the state from you. But what I do understand is Pennsylvania voters are unique and they are special. It is a swing state, as you know. You were a Biden delegate in the 2020 Democratic National Convention. As we sit here right now, a poll that just came out today, Biden's approval rating is at 40%. So how specifically are you getting voters excited to vote Democrat?
I think it really is driving home the core Democratic message, right? It's focusing on gun violence prevention. It's talking about reproductive justice. It's talking about supporting our LGBTQ communities. It's talking about how we're actually going to solve these problems. And so that's a message that's resonating. And I think people are really hungry for a leadership that's rooted in the diversity of this country, the diversity of this district. And again, coming from a family that is emblematic of the American dream, our story, being the first in my family to graduate from college and then coming back home, that is what we want in Western Pennsylvania, right? We want young people to choose this community as their home, to raise their families here, to buy homes, to start small businesses. And as somebody who has done that, I think people are really energized and excited about that. And again, looking towards the general election, looking to 2024, it's really, really critical that we have a Democrat that's willing to stand on a stage with President Biden and say that these are the values that our party represents, and this is how we're going to deliver for this region in this country. And I'm prepared to do that.
Sure. And if you're working hand in hand with the Biden administration, standing on stage with President Biden himself, the majority of the country is not happy with him. What do you say to those Americans and those voters in Western Pennsylvania?
I would say the Democrats deliver. Democrats are committed to doing the job. And we need somebody who can position our story, Western Pennsylvania's story, in Washington, D.C., and make sure that we're bringing home those federal dollars to spur our economy. And again, I think it takes somebody who's willing to show up, be present in the district, have conversations, empathetically relate to the challenges of day-to-day individuals, working class communities. And that's what we've been doing in this campaign. We've been showing up everywhere, having discussions, and I can tell you confidently that our message is resonating.
President Biden in today's Democratic Party and historically has been a moderate Democrat. Who you're challenging, Congresswoman Summer Lee, she's known as more far left. Since you are aligning yourself with President Biden, would you consider yourself a moderate Democrat?
I think President Biden has delivered on a progressive agenda. I think he's been remarkable for Democrats who really care about, again, various social justice issues, including gun violence prevention, reproductive justice, advocating for LGBTQ community, advocating for women and small business growth. And so I think, people are hungry for a type of leadership that's rooted in delivering progress. That means bringing home federal dollars, showing up in the community, I think that what people are rejecting is this sort of fringe and extremist wing of the Democratic Party. I think that is not in line with what the values of the Democratic Party are, and I think people in Western Pennsylvania are noticing that they want something that's different.
Let's talk about that a little bit. You're saying you want someone the constituents in District 12 want someone who's delivering progress, not fringe and extremist. When you say those types of things, do you think Congresswoman Summer Lee is fringe and extremist in the Democratic Party and is not delivering on promises?
I mean, look, an example of this would be, when we in July, when there was a vote to, increase the debt ceiling, we had a congresswoman here, our representative, who decided to vote against the Biden administration. To me, that sends a message that you are undermining the president and that you're not standing with what working class families in this region need. I think most recently, when we look at what's going on tragically in Israel, I mean, the handling of that situation has been, an example of spreading of misinformation, calling for things that are directly in contrast with what people want here in this community, not being willing to listen and empathize with the pain of what people are in our community, in our district, are going through, especially because we have this historic Jewish population. I mean, I'm sitting right here in our campaign headquarters in the heart of Squirrel Hill. Western Pennsylvania really prides itself in somebody who's willing to show up, be present, listen, and empathize. And I think that when you're unable to do that, and on top of that, you spread misinformation and say things that stoke anti-Semitism in the worst parts of human nature, that is fringe, that is extreme.
Are you saying Summer Lee is spreading misinformation?
So there was actually a tweet that went out from Congresswoman Lee's account in which there was a hospital that was bombed in Gaza, and the Israeli IDF, she had said that the Israeli IDF was responsible for it. President Biden had confirmed that that was not the case, and that tweet was kept up for quite some time. And so, my response to that is, as a sitting member of the U.S. House of Representatives, you have a responsibility to take in information, sit with it, get a full picture, and then respond. When you are being reactive, that showcases a lack of leadership. To me, that showcases that you are out of touch, and that's unacceptable.
She has called for a ceasefire in Gaza repeatedly. On October 7th, you put out a statement on X, formerly known as Twitter, saying Israel's our steadfast ally. So is calling for a ceasefire something that you agree with?
I do not agree with calling for a ceasefire. I think it's absolutely critical that we focus on bringing home hostages. All of those individuals that are being impacted by this deserve to be reunited with their loved ones. And we need to make sure that we keep that as our focus.
Many in the Democratic Party have been calling for a ceasefire. So what do you think our strategy with Israel going forward should be? Unequivocally standing with Israel, humanitarian pauses in Gaza. You don't think a total ceasefire. So what is the pathway forward here?
I think the Biden administration has done a phenomenal job of handling this very sort of nuanced situation. What I'm saying is that it's a complicated crisis that we're dealing with. Hamas is a terrorist organization that has perpetrated these horrific acts of violence against innocent individuals, Americans included. And so, making sure that we are advocating for humanitarian pauses, that aid is reaching innocent Palestinians in Gaza, and that we're taking the necessary actions and steps to ensure that we minimize loss of life is absolutely critical. We simultaneously also need to recognize that it's critical that we bring home the hostages that are being held and are reunited with their families.
I do now want to pivot just a little bit. Let's say you are elected. As we sit here right now, obviously that can change. The House has a Republican majority, so that means you would have to work across the aisle. What areas, what issues, what policies could you see yourself working with Republicans on?
For me, my priority is advocating for Pennsylvania's 12th congressional district. So whatever it takes to make sure that we're bringing home the federal dollars to invest, again, in gun violence prevention, to make sure that we're investing in housing, to make sure that we're addressing the homeless situation that we have in this region, to address substance use disorder. All of these things are interconnected, and I think that advocating for legislation and dollars back here at home is the key driving force for me. And again, I think I have a public service career that allows me to have those conversations, to have a nuanced discussion on what it means to represent the core Democratic platform and deliver for Western Pennsylvania.
Gun violence is a third rail issue in this country, it seems, between the two parties. Pittsburgh had a horrific mass shooting just a few years ago, and gun violence continues to ravage the nation. So where specifically could you work with Republicans on this? Because there seems to be an impasse when it comes to Democrats' views of gun violence prevention and Republicans.
So for me, somebody who comes up in local government, something that was really important to me was working with our local school districts to organize Stop the Bleed trainings. And so, I would like to see federal funding for programs like this that empower school districts, teachers, and students to take ownership and to educate ourselves around gun violence, and to understand how we can get guns off the streets in our local communities, and also invest in programs that allow individuals to have additional other outlets. I think that solving a problem like this needs to be locally rooted, and I'm really passionate about making sure that we bring home the dollars to programming that can support that.
We are just a few weeks away from 2024 in general, so I'm curious, what's next for your campaign?
We're very excited. We've had some really strong fundraising numbers thanks to a lot of local grassroots support and organizing efforts here. Again, we're sitting in our office. At our office opening, we had roughly 150 people throughout the district show up and showcase support for our message and my candidacy. Heading into January, we're just going to keep the momentum up strong. We're excited to visit every single part of this district. We're launching a district tour on December 13th, kickstarting in Monroeville, and we'll be having hundreds of conversations moving forward, and again, talking about how we're going to deliver for this region and make sure that people have a sense of upward mobility.
Bhavini Patel, thank you so much for joining me. Best of luck. I hope you come back soon.
Thank you so much.